Hi, I'm Li Hao. We have been talking about stores over the past few videos. And don't you find stores a bit boring and dull? Like whenever you set a value, it just changes to that value. Does not moves to that value elegantly, right? In this example that I prepared over here, I have a writable stores that is initial value is 0. And whenever I change it, it just changes to that value. Why don't it move slowly from 0 to 1 instead of just changing from 0 and then 1? Wouldn't it be better if we can have a special kind of stores where whenever we try to increment it, it moves slowly from 1 to 2, and showing the values in between like 1, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, all the way to 2. Wouldn't it be more beautiful and elegant? Right, so today, this is what we're going to do. We're going to create a custom store that allows us, whenever we set a value, allows us to, the value of that store itself will not go to that value, the target destination value directly, but rather it will slowly move to that value. And we're going to do it right now. So over here, I have my boring dull store called value, created using writable. I'm gonna create a new custom store, and I'm gonna use a function called tween, initial value, and then and I'm gonna use this to create a store for myself. So I'm gonna replace it with replace the writable to tween. But over here, I'm returning nothing. So nothing is not a store. Whatever a store has to follow a store contract. And a store contract dictates that it has to be an object. And that object has to have a function or method called subscribe, which takes in a function. And you kind of have to call the function immediately. Like say fn and then call some value. Right? So I'm going to call the initial value immediately. And over here, I need to return an unsubscribe method, right? So that I can unsubscribe from this custom store. So over here, as I've shown you many times in the previous videos, where I need to push this function into an array, we have to keep track of the all the list of subscribers and then remove it from that list in this function. So today I'm gonna be a bit lazy and actually a bit more efficient, which is actually you don't have to manually write this subscribe method to maintain a subscriber list. We can create, say, I'm gonna create a store called using writable with the initial value, and then we can cheat a bit by using the store's subscribe method instead. So subscribe will equal to the store.subscribe. So this way you can delegate all that responsibility of maintaining a list of subscribers, returning an unsubscribe method and everything to this store. And if you want to notify all the subscribers that a new value that you have, then what you need to do is to call store.set a value, and this will notify all the subscribers the new value. So today we're gonna cheat a bit, right? So over here, I have a subscribe method and I also need a set method. And I'm not gonna use a store.set directly because we want to do something different over here for the set method of our custom store. So I'm gonna call set and a new value. So over here, I need to slowly move my value from the value of my of my store slowly to the new value, and it takes time, takes some sort of duration. Probably we can make it like a parameter over here, say duration, and let's give it a default value. So here I'm gonna say 1 second. So at least I don't have to pass it in. The default is 1000. milliseconds. And over here, what we can do is we can use something like maybe like set interval. So on interval, maybe we can have an interval of say 100 millisecond. So on every 100 millisecond, we do something. So so we can keep updating this. On every 100 millisecond, we keep updating our store to a value. And then we have to calculate the value here. Okay. So we have an interval of keep updating the value. And of course, we need to know when to stop. So when we call set, we can get the starting time equals to date.now. And we can get an ending time equals, okay, start time and end time. So this will be the start time plus duration. So in the set interval, we can check that maybe let's get the current time equals to date.now. And if current time is greater than the end time, then we know we need to end this interval. So here to end it, we need an interval ID. So copy it and clear time interval. The interval ID, and I need to return. So I don't need to do whatever I'm going to do next. So over here, if it's not ending, if we are still looping, we need to know what is the new value, what is the value, like the intermediate value that we need to set to our store. So let's do the calculation. So we need to use something like a ratio. We compare, for example, the current time minus the starting time, divide by the ending time minus start time. So end time minus start time is actually the duration, so I'm going to do it by duration. So how long we elapse from the starting point over the whole duration will have to be equals to how long equals to the value that we want to will equals to the same ratio will equals to the value that we want to set, value to set minus the initial value over the new value minus initial value. Right? So how long elapsed over the total duration will be equals to how far from the initial value over the distance, total distance, that's new value over the initial value. And we need to calculate the value called the value to set. So we need to do some arithmetics to move this around. So I can shift this new value minus initial value over to the other sides. So this will be multiplication. Oops, let me wrap it up with a bracket. And then value to set will be, and then we shift the initial value over as a plus. So this whole thing plus initial value will equal to the value to set. So over here, I can copy this value to set and then put it as the value that we are calculating over here. Const value to set. So this is the value that we need to set, and so I'm going to set it in. And let's have a try. Right, so now I'm going to click increment. You see that the value slowly moves from 0 to 1. It's not going to set 0, 1 directly, right? It slowly moves from 0 to 1. And now we click again. Whoops, it starts from 0 again. Do you notice that? Let's try again. Let's clear this. So the first time starts from 0 to almost 1.9. So this is something we need to fix. And then when we click again, it goes from 0 again and all the way to 1.9. What's wrong over here? Let's see. Okay. So there's two things to fix, right? First is whenever we increment, it always starts from 0, counting from 0 again. And that's because we keep using initial value over here. Once we have set the store, like once the value has reached the new value, we should update this initial value to the new value, right? This will be the new initial value. So over here, I am gonna come over here. Current, when we hit the ending, this is when it ends. I'm gonna say initial value. It's equals to the new value. So let's try this again. 0 plus all the way to almost 1. So this is something we haven't fixed yet. And when we increment, it moves. It continues moving, right? From 1 all the way to almost 2. And then when we click again, it moves from 2 to almost like 3. So when I say almost, it is almost. So to make this looks nicer, this is actually because the time, our interval is not always in like 100 milliseconds. It actually sometimes it offshoots a bit and sometimes it's less a bit. So probably when you reach the end, maybe the last time you update is not yet 3, and then this time around when you offset overshoots a bit, we don't really update the store anymore. So over here, before we end, actually we can do one more update, which is we're gonna set store.set to the new value. So if we do this right now, I'm gonna try again. It always ends nicely at the target value. Alright, so 1, and then now increments all the way to 2, with decrement 2 all the way to 1. Nicely done. So let's set this slightly longer duration, and let's try again. It takes 5 milliseconds, 5 seconds, but if the midway, if we try to decrement, you probably see something as the value, it's jumping a lot. It's jumping a lot from, if you can, okay, let's try plus minus equals 10. So when we go this, it tries to go from 0 to 10, and then when you try again, oops, you see that it's jumping. It's trying to update, like it feels like there's multiple things trying to update our value at the same time. Let me do this. I think it's easier to demonstrate it this way, where we have where this value is over here, so that I can click on the minus or plus easily. So if I click decrement, it should go to negative, and I should click plus, it should go to positive value, right? And if you click this and we try to do this, you see that it's still in negative, and it's like flipping from negative to like, I'm not sure, positive or something. So what's my point? Okay, so my point is whenever we change halfway, we have to actually cancel this interval and then moves to the new target value from there on. What that means is that this shouldn't be interval ID shouldn't be a variable inside here anymore. Should be declared outside. And when we have a new set, we should actually, if interval ID, we need to clear interval ID and then start from there. So I do clear. Over here, I also need to just to clean up. I need to set interval ID with null and then return. So let's see, minus and I plus. Now it seems like the new one does not takes in effect at all. Yeah, what could be wrong? Let's see. Is there an error? I see an error. Clear interval ID. Oh, clear interval. Oh, no wonder. Okay. So plus, minus, plus, and then minus. You can see that the number jumps. If I do minus now, it jumps to 0 and then slowly moves down. And it does not continue from where the current number is. Actually, you could kind of feel that we're starting from -10 to 20, right? And if I plus immediately, it feels like it's trying to move from -10 to some other numbers instead. It does not hold on. To be fair, this should be +10. Okay. So for example, what I'm trying to say is right now it's 0. And I'm trying to click decrement -10. It slowly moves from 0 to -10. But in midway, if I click plus, it should be moving from 0 to... It feels like it's going to move from 0 to 10 instead of like halfway to 10. So let's see that again. So I'm moving halfway, which is -5, and I click plus. It jumps from 0 all the way to a new value. So this new value is actually correct in a sense where I actually click +10 when I'm at -8. So -8 plus 10 is 2 plus 2.5 something, right? So if I move over here, it slowly moves to -8. Maybe right now -4, and I click, it moves all the way to -4 plus 10 is like 6-ish. But then it moves from the 2 instead of like -4. So what's my point? My point is that the initial value has to be always updated. Has to be always updated so that whenever we cancel and we start from there on, this initial value should be the latest, should be calculated as the latest of the value to set. But we shouldn't affect this initial value. We shouldn't change this initial value like this. Like, shouldn't say initial value to set. We can't do it like this way because this will affect the formula of value to set again, because the range from new value to initial value will be wrong. We still want the previous initial value before we cancel, and then we I guess you get what I'm trying to say. So over here, there's a few ways to do it. So first thing is, before we start over here, before we clear interval, we can get a hold of the value, like the current value. So for example, instead of having set over like constant this as a local variable, I can have value to set over here. And over here, if I try to set again, which if I clear interval, then this tells me that, okay, I need to interval ID equals to now. This tells me that previously the value to set is some sort of value, and I need to update it. I need to update the initial value to value to set. And this reminds me I need to do this as well over here. Actually, okay, we have done this, right? So that this will be slightly correct. So let's try again and see. So we move halfway to 3 to 4 to 5, and then I click. It slowly moves down from 3 to 1 all the way to just now was what, 7 or 8-ish, and then -10 is like roughly 2.8-ish, right? So, phew, we've made a lot of code over here. It looks very complex, right? But hopefully you get the flow of this. If we want to make our variable slowly move towards the target, this is what we would have to write. Or no, actually this tween is actually provided, it's actually built in from Svelte. You can use it directly. Although it's not from the store, but it also still implements the store contract. So it's actually from Svelte Motion. So I'm not gonna remove this because maybe you want to take a read what we have accomplished so far, but let me comment it out. We can use tween. API does not change, but as you can see, ignoring the moving faster parts, it's not using an interval, it's using a request animation frame, which is much faster. As in, we can make it fast as well if we have like a smaller intervals as well, right? But ignore the fact, it still works the way we were designing, right? So in this, the second parameter of the tween is not a number, it's not duration, but an object where you can pass in a duration. So let's pass in like 5 milliseconds again and take a look at the problems that we're trying to solve just now, right? Move halfway and I kind of remove. It continues from there instead of jumping here and there, right? I think Svelte does a very good job in handling all those edge cases. And if we start from 0, it also nicely lands at 10 instead of having all the decimal points, right? That is something that we've done over here as well. Make sure it nicely set the value at the end of the time. So let's take a look at the docs for tween and see what else we can pass it in. So tween takes in not just duration, it takes in also delay, easing, and interpolation. And delay itself is pretty interesting because, for example, if I say a delay of say 1 second, okay, maybe 2 seconds, and I change, takes 2 second delay and then slowly move up. And when I click minus, it does not change immediately, except 2 seconds later it's slowly going back, right? 2 seconds later, then 2 seconds later, it slowly decrease back. So it still takes in, it still moves from where it is at that point of time, but it takes delay of 2 seconds. And then here you have easing. Easing is a function that you can control how much, what's the rate of moving from the initial point to the final point. And it interpolates, which is how, which is depending on what kind of value you have, you can interpolate it differently, right? For example, if you are, you can use tween with colors as well. You can tween between colors, and you also can tween dates and time and a lot of things. You can try that out. So beside tween, Svelte also provides something called spring. So spring is also something like tween, except that it moves like a spring. It has like so let's replace this and let's take a look at the value. So let's increment. You can see the value is incrementing a bit like a spring, and you can't tell that from the number itself. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use a color diff so that you can visualize it better. So style equals to, say, background rate, and then width 1 px, height 5 px, and okay, this is a bit short. That's 10 px, okay, 20 px. Okay, this is more like it. And then transform, scale, and I'm gonna use the spring value. you can see it does not move directly. It has some kind of springy feeling to it. And if you can pass in values like stiffness to control the spring itself. So over here, if I say stiffness equals to 0, oops, let's see, it's 0 to 1, right? Not sure, too stiff, can't move. 1. If we move to like 0.8, 0.4, you have different kind of okay, I think we need to add some damping so that if you have more damping, you will have more springy feeling. Less damping, you have more springy feeling. It does not, and like the movement does not end immediately. And if we have like a lot of damping, then it will less springy, right? So you can play around with this value, but the point is, Svelte provides 2 built-in functions: spring and tween, which returns an object that follows a store contract, so it's still like a store. But when you set a value to the store, it does not update the value of the store immediately, but it slowly moves from one value to that value through some sort of tweening, interpolation, and some springy feeling, right? So that's all for today. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you have anything to ask, comments down below. And as always, remember to subscribe to my video so that you get notified when the next one is out. So see ya, bye bye.